Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast. We have Reiner Kraft with us. He's a PhD, a scientist, an expert on functional epigenetics and longevity, which is one of my favorite topics. He's a CTO mentor and coach, former CTO himself, VP engineer at Zalando, Silicon Valley veteran, an MIT TR100 innovator, and a tech and scientific advisor, and also biohacker. So me and Reiner share a lot in common together. This podcast is brought to you by podpire.com. That is my podcasting company. If you want to start your podcast, scale it, monetize it, you can go to podpire.com. We have a free ebook and a masterclass waiting for you there. Reiner, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, thanks, Charles, for the intro. And yeah, I'm glad to be here on the podcast and hope I can share some interesting topics and stuff we will be talking about. Yeah, I'm nowadays, you already mentioned that I spent quite some time in the tech and spent most of my time in the Silicon Valley. And then later on, I moved to Berlin, Germany, where I spent the last 7-8 years. And now I'm a little bit north of Frankfurt, but I work on completely other topics around longevity, epigenetics, optimization of body and mind. But I'm still a computer scientist, so I still use similar principles to apply it now, to the body instead of writing software.
And since last time we spoke, basically you seem to have two new companies here. One for sure, right? EverHealth, and then Diet Epigenetic Praxis, which is in German. So that's beautiful German right there. Tell us about EverHealth and why you decided to even narrow down even more on longevity and biohacking.
Yeah, I think when we talked the last time, it's been a while. We were talking more about, in general, resilience, performance, leadership stuff, mind management, in general, upgrading the mind. So a lot of the work I did in my time, probably started 10 years ago, was how you can pretty much rewrite the software of the mind. And then, however, later I also realized that the mind needs a really healthy body. But how do you get a healthy body, right? What can you do? And this is where I got more and more into functional medicine, the science of epigenetics, and so on. And then when I moved to the Frankfurt area here, a little bit north of Frankfurt in the countryside, I created my own biohacking lab and office, which is the epigenetic Praxis in German. So it's all about epigenetics, optimization based on your DNA and genes. And then I'm doing this now for about 2 years. So I have clients, usually executives, leaders, entrepreneurs, who've found out about my work, and then somehow they inquire here, how can you help me? And then I do some coaching around these areas of getting them in really great shape with supplements and with a stack of routines and nutrition, fasting, biohacking, whatever, to in a very systematic way to get them in great shape. But I realized it's quite complex. When I started doing this, usually I just published my own longevity stack on my blog. And usually I have about 80 to 100 pills per day that I take as part of this, similar like Bryan Johnson. So you can compare it probably to what he's doing, not as rigid, not as rigorous, because my approach is still about do, measure, learn. It's about looking at biomarkers, looking at changes, but it's a more flexible approach because Bryan Johnson's approach is very structured. There is a little bit of eating in the day, the rest is fasting, go to bed at 8:30 and so on. So it's very hard to for normal or regular people to do a lifestyle like this, especially when you work in tech or when you work somewhere in some leadership role. And so I needed to find a protocol on longevity that fits into typical what typical entrepreneurs can actually do and cram into their day. And so that's why my longevity protocol, you can definitely, from the results I've seen with my clients, you can get similar results, but it's a little bit more balanced. And it's usually not, the goal is not to really squeeze out the most what you can get, like in this self experiment of Bryan Johnson, when he's pretty much has this big staff of medical doctors and so on, and trying to get every little inch and optimization out of it. For me, it's more about like the 80-20 rule, so helping people to really get at their peak performance, but getting it in a way that is feasible for them, it's practical, where they can get a lot of stuff done with less, basically still fitting into their typical tight schedule.
Yeah, I love that. I've started watching the Bryan Johnson Netflix this weekend, and obviously as a biohacker, I've been following him for a while. I think that, yeah, Bryan Johnson is like the Silicon Valley mindset put to diet and health and all that, aka a micro level of obsession on pretty much everything, and trying to really much be perfect in all spheres. You know, I think Bryan Johnson is making some great advancements for humanity, but I think he's scaring a bunch of people off as well, and he's also discouraging a bunch of people from going on with these crazy diets and workout routines, because he's pretty much perfect in everything, right? Like perfect sleep score and all that. I know that it's great marketing, but a lot of people, they might be starting these routines and they might be failing at these routines. So what do you think is a scalable approach for, let's say, a 55-year-old entrepreneur slash CEO that is not fit, you know, has a dad bod and has been sort of letting go of his health routine for a while? Where should they start? You know, because working out is really hard for most. Dieting and starving yourself is also very hard for most. Shouldn't they start with developing, you know, mental resilience and grit as a start? Where would you start?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's a lot of different topics that you, pretty much put up for discussion. I think the starting point usually is, I typically indeed start with the body, with some basic supplements, macronutrients, because usually people lack these type of nutrients from regular nutrition, especially if you're on the run for a lot of the time of the day, or if you're traveling a lot. And so I'm trying to figure out usually a good stack of macronutrients, fatty acids, phospholipids, nucleotides, collagen and amino acids, and so on. And then minerals, and so some very foundational stack of supplements, not too many, so that people can get used to it and see how they can fit it in. The biggest challenge is usually for them how to put it into routine. And since they travel a lot, they have every day might be a little bit different. So the key aspect of my longevity protocol is flexibility built in, so that I give them pretty much like a toolbox, like a menu. Say, here, look, these are those things that you can try to put into your daily routine, see how it goes. And then they can work their way through, experiment, explore some of those things. It's always, there's a combination of, if you look at Bryan Johnson's protocol, it's always, there's some sport, exercise stuff, there is sleep, recovery, there's some fasting, and so on. The diet, for instance, right, it can't be as restrictive at that, because life is more diverse, right? And so you have, especially for the diet, right, so you have to figure out what can you do even if you're on the go, in terms of as healthy as possible, but what is actually realistic. And my protocol is also designed to be very flexible here, and then people can push it as much as they want. So you can end up, if you really want to push it to the extreme, it would look probably more like a Bryan Johnson protocol, but in the reality, it's usually a good balance between sometimes home cooked meals, or meal prep that works for the week, that is more healthy. And then at the end, you always have these days when things are not working out that well. But it's fine as well, right? So it's pretty much here's all the stuff that you can do. Pick some of them, see how they work, and everything adds up. And people usually benefit from every little thing they do. It helps for the body to get a little bit in better shape.
Right. And right now, with Ever, who are you targeting? Is it Germany? How are you finding the EU market response vs the American market? And where do you want to take the platform itself?
Yeah, so when I started then exploring these longevity protocols, and you can easily see how complex they may become. And for health practitioners, it's also hard. It takes a lot of time to work with a patient and help them to settle in onto such a longevity protocol, because we're usually talking about 30, 40, 50 different supplements. And that's all time consuming, it's complex. And at the end of the day, algorithms, AI is much better suited to deal with this complexity. And that's when I decided I know how it works, I know what to do. And let's build an app, actually. Let's build a platform that brings together these health practitioners on one side. They're very good in crafting these protocols. There's also experienced biohackers. They also know how to craft protocols. And then there is pretty much the rest, everyone else who likes to do something meaningful with supplements and with some of these health choices, but they have no clue how to do it. And that's where Ever comes in. And so we founded it just a quarter ago. We're working now on an MVP. We're planning to launch it for a test here in March in German, in a German market, Austria and Switzerland, pretty much the DACH region. And then see how it evolves. I think at the end of the day, the model is scalable. We're definitely looking also then broaden it and expanding it in Europe. In the US for sure. But yeah, those are all things once we get the basics up and running and see where it can take us.
Right. And the AI component of it, tell us a bit more about it. Is it like a platform which I can upload my data and sort of ChatGPT backend for it to make sense and give me suggestions? Tell me about the features of the platform.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, here's where the complexity kicks in. So once you start working with the app, let's say you take 20 supplements per day, they have an impact on your body. So then you can upload blood work, lab work, and all of a sudden we're looking at 20, 30 different lab biomarkers. You may have some wearable tech as well, like an Oura ring or what other device, Whoop, right? Whatever. So biomarkers are piling up. And then when you do DNA analysis, usually simple DNA tests, they come with 50, 60 different genes with all the kind of variations called SNPs. And that is how the body is basically wired. It's the blueprint. And if you put these things together, once you know what the blueprint is, once you then know what all the current status in the body is using this lab work and biomarkers, and then you're using these supplements to make changes to the behavior and then actually to the outcome of these biomarkers. And so now we have a feedback loop, and this is where the learning kicks in, right? So we want basically as the amount of data is growing that we're collecting, if thousands, hundreds, thousands, and eventually millions of users are using the platform and uploading their data, this is when it gets interesting. This is when the AI can then kick in. But we probably have to train these models according to these specific use cases here. It's not out of the box thing. Because we're looking for a very specific problem domain and a very specific feedback loop. And so that will be then the challenge that we have to focus on once we get the data in. But it will be exciting and it should be doable.
And what is your moonshot goal with that one? Could all the data that you gather help advance discovery and science when it comes to longevity? And any predictions of where AI can bring longevity in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If this concept, I mean, it's it makes completely sense that once the system learns about you, what your biomarkers are, what your DNA is, your genetic blueprint, and the stuff what you're doing, what you're eating, what the exercise you're doing, there's all this data coming in. And AI will be able much easier to make sense out of this mess and complexity of data. And at the end, what it will do is give you simple actionable advice. So it will be much smarter than you actually are in terms of making good decisions with your body. I mean, Bryan Johnson is actually talking about it. I mean, he has a point there that he says it's actually your mind that makes the big mistakes in the evening when you decide, oh, let's have a beer or let's do this or that. Which may not be that healthy, right? And I think the AI can do this on an even deeper level, much more sophisticated. And of course, it can also learn from your preferences then as well, right? Because it may still say, well, you shouldn't eat that pizza now. And of course, you can still eat the pizza, right? So it gives you the smartness so that you pretty much can rely on in terms of what to do, what to do for your health purposes, what to eat on supplements and food and so on. It will pretty much learn that what gives you the best results and inform you in an easy way so you don't have to think about it.
Right. Now the mindset component of it, like in people that aren't capable of resisting to that pizza and the science of willpower, what's your take on it? Because I mean, I'm a multiple time Ironman's, multiple ultra race finisher. And to me, adopting most habits is really easy because I've put hardship on myself, right? And I've worked that grit muscle. And I can pretty much achieve anything that I want nowadays as a result of that. But it was very hard, right? It was incredibly hard. And most people do not want to put discomfort on themselves. So what's the science to change and adapting stuff? Because I feel that people are going for the beers that they pretty much have no other options, right? They forgot about these options. They aren't motivated to have these options, these other options. Nowadays, I was preaching micro habits, right? The power of micro habits and starting putting your shoes, then walking, then running, right? For example, is a good example. And then once you come back from that run, you can stack habits on top of the other. So you just had a nice run, then now you eat healthy, now you go for a sauna. And you keep stacking the momentum, right? What is some of your advice when it comes to change and lasting change, that is?
Yeah, that's a very difficult problem, a very difficult topic. On one side, however, I want to say that a lot of the focus and attention span and all that stuff which is required of making good decisions, of staying focused, of following up with things, is also related to the balance of your neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters is all the signal communication happening in the brain, and if there is a lack of cofactors, if there is specific genetic variations, like some people are more easily distracted than others, and usually it's an imbalance of these neurotransmitters. And I think in that case, the app should learn that this is actually the case. Looking at some of the lab work, there is certain lab work that you can do. Neurotransmitter panel, as an example, looks at your dopamine levels, serotonin levels, GABA levels, and so on. And then you can see how are they in a reference compared to the reference values. And of course, the app can also tell you what to do to balance these things out. And I think fixing those neurotransmitters, especially at the beginning, could be a wise focus, because once those neurotransmitters are in better shape, you have more grit, you have more willpower, and you can then have more energy as well, mental energy, to make these changes, because they require this willpower, right? And I think maximizing, therefore, the body first, I think, is a smart thing. But then once you have done that, there are still other obstacles in terms of the mind, the busy mind, the worrying mind. People get then still easily distracted. So it's not finished with, but it gives the foundation, getting the neurotransmitters in good shape.
Right. We talked about your supplement stack, but what other habits do you install in your current life when it comes to sleep, when it comes to diet? when it comes to habits that are optimizing your brain and your performances?
Yeah, I mean, it is always a combination of different areas. It's pretty much most of the biohackers in this field. It's always the same areas, to be honest, right? As sleep is a key priority. There is always the mental balance, stress management, meditation, all those things to relax and unwind. There is the whole nutrition aspect. There's the whole fasting aspect. There is sports, exercise, and so on. So it's usually there's all these healthy things that you can do, but the reality is everyone has also different preferences. Everyone has a different schedule, and at the end, I think what I'm hoping here is that the Ever app can give you like a little menu every day, so that you can see, oh, I could maybe do some running today, or maybe I play some golf, or maybe, oh, now it's time to take some magnesium, whatever. So it could give you this type of guidance, but at the end, these are just options. People can follow it or not, and even if they don't, that's a good thing, because they should keep their own rhythm of things. But of course, if they take some of these options up, they should see definitely some benefits as well.
What goals do you have for yourself in 2025 other than scaling Ever? Where do you want to scale yourself, and what are your moonshots?
Yeah, I think for since now I have so many different things going on, and I still have many clients that I work with and help them to get up in the longevity game. So this will most likely decrease as just managing my time and spending more time on getting the product in good shape. So there will be a lot of these challenges on the product side, business challenges, and then I have to, of course, myself make sure I stick to my longevity routine, which works very well so far. But I have to juggle it then myself, and have to also continue working on improving my biomarkers, my biological age, and so on. So that is the challenge I have on my body and mind as well, right? Sticking with a clear mindset, meditating, and keeping stress levels down. That is also a personal objective. And then at the end of the day, you still want to have some spare time, free time with friends, family, and so on. So you can see that is a challenge, right? I think to get this all in. And I think that's why everything that can help to organize this easier, I think will be helpful.
Love it. And where can people find out more about you, Reiner?
Yeah, I think probably on LinkedIn is a good place to start. I'm well connected there. If they look at my LinkedIn profile, the Ever website, maybe we can put a link out there later in the show notes, everhealth.ai. If they are interested, or my other website, epigeneticpraxis.de. There is, of course, automatic translation, so you can also read everything in English, and that has my blog. I think my blog contains a lot of this details we talked about, my longevity protocol, all the bells and whistles and supplements and lifestyle stuff that you can do for anti-aging. So there's a lot of details there. So maybe the easiest to start the trail with LinkedIn and then work your way through. And if that podcast later has some links there, then of course that would also be a good choice.
That was Reiner Kraft and Charles Cormier for another